It's time. He is not pleased at all. So hi, Past Bing. Let's talk about money. I'm really glad you opened up this can of worms because I have a lot to say. Money is something you and I never took the time to understand, like a lot of people. And when you don't understand something that important, you can become trapped in that ignorance and make the same mistake over and over again without even realizing it. That book you're holding in your hand, it's not even very good, but it's the start of something big. You already developed a bit of a taste for nonfiction like this in 2015. But then January happened. This month, you are poorer than you've ever been, Past Bing. And the anxiety of not knowing what to do about it, not knowing how you were going to afford your rent, your bills, not knowing where your next paycheck was coming from, was weighing on you more than you let on. But eventually, it spurred you on, and that book was the first step down a rabbit hole of other books about economics, personal finance, and personal development. You asked questions. You found people who seemed to know their shit, and asked them to recommend you stuff. You devoured those books, and you weren't afraid to read things that people might scoff at or think were too boring. And then you took action. You reorganized all your finances. You swapped banks. You closed all your accounts. You opened new ones. You closed cards. You organized your direct debits. You got organized with keeping your accounts up to date and understanding what you were spending. You adulted real good, Past Bing. You adulted so good. You set yourself rules like no new clothes for a year, and you stuck to them. And when you did spend money, you had your rules and your systems in mind. You managed to earn less in 2016 than any previous year since you graduated. But you managed to feel baller. You budgeted for the things that you really cared about, so you were able to eat out at restaurants and you were able to afford presents for your friends and family at Christmas. Because for the first time in your life, you took a moment to understand what you were doing and ask yourself what your priorities were. So I can hear you screaming through YouTube, what did you read? What did you read? Future Bing, tell us, we want to be like you. So I've prepared a reading list of books I recommend that helped me get from where you are now, Past Bing, to where I am. It was a lot of work and it's an ongoing process. I actually reread a couple of them over Christmas, but I found all of these books useful in some way. The first is a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. I've actually mentioned this in a previous video. It needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. Not everything in it is going to work for every person, but it was a fantastic first personal development book to read. From there we go to the authorized biography of Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. Now I know this is a biography and not an economics book or a business book, but it has a lot to offer in those areas. Steve Jobs, as a man, was a dick, but we can learn so much from his early life. Plus, I feel like it should just be required reading for anyone living in the digital age, because it gives you so much background on the people and the companies and the technology that shaped the world we live in. From there, we go to Good to Great by Jim Collins. This is basically the antithesis of the Steve Jobs book. Jim Collins headed up a massive research project and compiled it into this book. They looked at case studies of companies that have sustained huge growth over a long period of time and asked, how? Why? What makes them special? And in it, I learned things about business and about leadership that are invaluable. It's also a perfect book to read after the Steve Jobs thing, which might have you thinking that to be a successful company, you have to be super aggressive and a bully and a dick all the time. Good to Great says no, don't do that, it's unsustainable, and offers a more accessible, humanist approach to building a business. Somewhat related, I also recommend a book called Free Ride by Robert Levine, which offers a more critical look at copyright and the digital revolution. From there we went into Money with The Devil's Deal, the book you are currently borrowing from our housemate Callum. It's not by any means a great book. It endeavors to explain the basics of global economics and investment banking with a fictional story. So you get a kind of hackneyed mystery novella happening, but every couple of pages when a character says something, there's a little box that explains the principles behind it. I did not care about the story. but I learned quite a lot. Then a friend of mine who's deep into the world of evangelical personal development recommended me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This one is an infamous classic. It's a pretty poorly written book of faux philosophy and anecdotes that try to reprogram how you think about money. And again, like Stephen R. Covey and a lot of these books, it needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. But I went into it with an open and critical mind, and I learned a lot. I asked a lot of questions that I'd never asked before, and I did find myself growing. Then I backed it up with a much more practical book that happens to have the worst title in the world. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi is basically a big to-do list on how to reorganize your finances. The complete opposite of Kiyosaki, who never really gives you any actionable things to do. Ramit gives you pretty up-to-date information on banks, what kind of accounts to open, what kind of savers to open, how and where and what to do. It's an American book, so I had to do some quick translations in my head. Roth IRA to cash ISA, things like that. And I didn't do every step exactly as he described. But this book was what I needed to start affecting actual change. Around the same time, I also listened to an audiobook of The Economic Naturalist by Robert Frank, which is just kind of fun and interesting. Throw in some early Stoic philosophy, some Anthony Grayling, the memoirs of Richard Nixon, and some 70s sci-fi, and you've got my book diet going back a year and a half. The written materials that helped turn you into me and shape the way I look at the world. I hope some or all of these recommendations are useful to the people watching. I also hope I can continue to be as good with money as you learned to be in 2016. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But this is one piece of the puzzle you already have.